Hello everybody. Today I'd like to make a slightly different video. I'm in my home in Pu-erh and I'm gonna brew for you 3 different teas. I'm gonna brew them grandpa style in a wine glass, and we're gonna look at how the leaves expand in the glass. So all these 3 teas were made in spring 2019, only a couple of weeks before shooting this video. At my left you have a black tea that was sun-dried in our tea farm. On the center you have a white tea that was dried in our factory in the shade. And at my right I have a Sheng Pu-erh that was made in March in our factory that I processed. All these 3 teas come from the plantations of Jingmai Mountain. Jingmai Mountain is where we have our tea factory. It's in the southwest of Yunnan. We sell teas from our factory on our website. I have put a link in the description. So let's get started. So at the right is the Sheng Pu-erh, which we're gonna brew first. Wait for it. Then in the center is the white tea. And finally, the sun-dried black tea on the left. And here I invite you to wait and see how those leaves open up. And you will notice right away that the white tea seems to take much more time to open up than the black tea, for example. The black tea seems to be opening fast. You can see the leaves moving all around. It is so beautiful to watch those leaves opening up. It is something, a part of the tea that we rarely get to enjoy when we brew Gongfu style. And that's why it's always nice to change your habits so that you can explore a little bit. You can explore different parts of the beauty of tea. So why do you think the white tea is taking more time to open up? Think in terms of processing techniques. So I'm gonna repeat again the processing techniques for each of the teas. The Sheng Pu-erh is withered, kiln-greened, so cooked, rolled, and sun-dried. The white tea is dried in the shade, and the black tea is withered, rolled, oxidized, and sun-dried. And actually, the white tea taking more time to open up is because it's not rolled, I would say mainly. It's neither cooked nor rolled. And especially rolling is a process that facilitates the extraction of the compounds of tea that make the taste. And since this white tea has a preserved integrity, like the structure of the leaves is preserved, the cells are not broken, they are not destroyed at all. They are just like any natural leaf that you'd find in the forest. And so, since there is no rolling, well, the hot water has to make its way through the center of the leaf, and you can kind of say that right now the hot water is partially cooking the leaves, kind of boiling it. Well, it is degrading, it is spending some energy into degrading the cells so that the compounds can be extracted. Well, this work was already done during the kiln process when we made the Sheng Cha when we made the Pu-erh tea. So it is firstly done during the kill green because we add in heat, and then it is complemented by the rolling. A rolling which is relatively light compared to other kinds of tea. Excepted white tea, Pu-erh tea probably has the lightest rolling of all. Okay, if you want to make green tea, black tea, oolong tea, the rolling will be stronger and longer than if you make Sheng Pu-erh. Now how about the black tea? So as I said, the black tea was rolled for about an hour. Now depending on your technique, you might add more or less pressure during the rolling. You could use constant pressure throughout the rolling, or you could slowly increase it as the leaves get more tight. Or you could use a cycle of pressure and loosening. That's also a method used when making black tea. So now you can see that the color is changing, but as you can see, the white tea is still very light. So I'm gonna move the leaves just a little bit, just for you to see if something happens. You can also see that, there are slight traces of burning on my Sheng Pu-erh. And you can see traces of oxidation on the white tea. You can see dark spots, red spots on the leaves. And these spots are caused by bruises that the fresh leaves get when they are transported from the tea trees to the tea factory. So when you're a tea picker and you want to do your job well, then you should be very careful with the leaves, because any bumping, for example, when you're carrying your heavy bag and you just dump it on the ground violently, it's going to create bruises in the tea, and that will affect the oxidation speed. Because of the bruise, like the cells are a bit broken, and the secondary compounds like all the enzymes and the polyphenol will mix together, come out of the leaves and start oxidizing, which means they will turn red. So especially if you're making green tea, that's something you want to avoid, and you have to be very careful with the handling of the fresh leaves. Now this black tea was lightly oxidized. The oxidation is not complete yet. You can still see traces of oxidation in the leaves. We haven't cooked the black tea. The enzymes in the leaves are still active, which means that eventually the leaves will finish oxidizing. Now their oxidation rate is slowed down simply because the leaves are dry. But as soon as there's a bit of humidity in the air, then the leaves' moisture content will increase, and that will speed up that enzymatic activity. So when you have low oxidation black tea, such as this one, you can expect it to be lowly oxidized for maybe 6 months, or maybe 1 year if you're in a dry place. But once it gets a bit of aging, the oxidation will be complete. Now how about that white tea? Let's have a look at the white tea. Oh, you can see that bruise very clearly here. It's actually already darker than when we made it. We made it about 1 month ago, and now it's a little bit yellow. I remember that when it was just right off the drying mat, it was bright green, almost like Japanese green tea. So the oxidation in white tea is also very fast, and it's also because there is no kill green, so the enzymes are still active, and their activity is only slowed down by the lack of moisture in the leaves. Which means that once we will press, if you press your white tea into cakes, the steaming required for the pressing of the cakes, you need to steam the leaves to make them more flexible. This steaming will reactivate the enzymatic activity, and so during that pressing process, your white tea will oxidize to an extent of about 1 year of aging under normal conditions. So right after pressing, this white tea will already be very different. You can see that after a while, the leaves soaking in hot water have kind of opened up. Their texture is different and somewhat similar, even though slightly rougher than the Pu-erh tea that I have next to me. So this is the last of our tea, and you can see, can I move it a little bit? Let's have the leaves turn a little bit. You can also see some traces of oxidation, which are due to the bruises that occurred during transportation from the tea gardens to the tea factory. These bruising can, to a lesser extent, also occur during the kilgreen process when you throw the leaves against the wok wall. If you do it too violently and your fire is not hot, so if you do it for a while without having the leaves being cooked and having their enzymes deactivated, then you will also see the appearance of such bruises and therefore partial oxidation in some spots. This oxidation can also be the result of insect bites. Well, for example, the Oriental Beauty, in which this characteristic is a sought after aspect of Oriental Beauty. They wait for insects to come and bite the leaves, and because of the puncture made in the leaf, the cells will react and kind of suicide to prevent the spread of viruses, because insects are very, especially insects that puncture the leaves, they are at a high risk of having viruses in their mouth or in their guts. So it's a kind of immune system that the plant has. It's called apoptosis, and it is the triggering of death by the cell itself when it feels like its integrity has been compromised, when it's punctured by something. And yeah, as I showed you, you can see some traces of light burning. It's not a big problem if they are limited, but you can definitely feel a roasted taste if there's too much burning. So too much burning is the result of well, of maybe not moving the leaves fast enough when you're doing the kill green. So what I like to illustrate with those three teas is that from the same material you can make very different leaves, and these teas have very, very different tasting profiles, and these leaves have very different tasting profiles, and they will age in a different way. Black tea can be enjoyed for about 2 years. Sun-dried black tea maybe a bit more. White tea, we usually say it's complete, its aging is complete after 5 to 7 years. Now, of course, it depends a lot on your storage condition. As for Pu-erh, you can store it for 20, 30 years. As long as the processing was well done and your storage environment is suitable, then this tea will age very well. So far we've had great results with our teas, and aging mainly means oxidation. It means that as the tea ages, it turns darker and darker. So by processing the leaves, you get them dry and you give them an initial level of oxidation. And you also give them a potential for further aging, a potential for further oxidation or not. For example, the oolong teas, green teas, and classical black teas are not meant to be aged, because the enzymes are supposed to be totally deactivated. And those make up the majority of the tea produced in the world. So here we have three kind of outsiders. So for example, this sun-dried black tea was lowly oxidized. So it has, we gave it a low initial level of oxidation, but because it is black tea and because it was sun-dried and not dried with hot air, the enzymes are as intact as in white tea, you could say. So it has a full potential. It will, the enzymatic activity will be quick in this kind of tea. Now with the white tea, well, this is also a special case. This is getting very popular nowadays. It's made in India, in Fujian, in Yunnan, in a lot of places, actually in a lot of provinces in China you can find white tea. This tea is easy to make, but it gets very complex with aging. And I always recommend to give it a little bit of aging, or at least, or you could press it. This is equivalent to aging. That makes the fragrance much more complex. Right out of the batch, right out of the drying mat, this kind of tea is not at its best, definitely. And then Pu-erh tea, of course, which is probably one of the oldest ways of making tea, because you can make that Pu-erh tea without any machine. You don't need any electricity for that. But yet, in the world, it doesn't represent a very large percentage of the tea that's made. Even though in China, its production is quite significantly high. When we went to Shenzhen at the tea expo, I would say maybe 60% of the expo was dedicated to Pu-erh tea. So it's definitely the most fashionable tea, and probably the most popular tea in the high quality market in China nowadays. And I totally understand why. It's because it is such a rich world, this Pu-erh tea. It has a complexity that very few other categories of tea can can show. It is also the tea that's hardest to understand, and the tea that's usually not appealing to beginners who prefer fragrance over mouthfeel, who prefer the beauty of the leaves over the chachi or other huigan, the aftertaste. Okay, so now our tea has cooled down, and I guess it's time to enjoy it. But this, I will let you the pleasure to do it yourself. I'm gonna stop the video now. I hope you really enjoyed this. So now I'm going to enjoy those different teas. I hope you're at home and enjoying great tea as well. You can find those teas on our website. I have put the link in the description. So see you again. Goodbye.